They announced Declan's promotion during the Thursday morning all-hands meeting at 9:47 a.m. Director of Strategic Risk Analytics effective immediately, with a compensation package that included a $195,000 base salary, a $120,000 increase from his current analyst role. The conference room filled with applause. I joined in, clapping with everyone else, they keeping the same neutral expression I'd refined over 11 years of watching less qualified people move ahead of me. What they didn't announce was my compensation update, which came later delivered privately by Ramona Castellanos, our VP of Human Capital, in a hastily scheduled 3:15 p.m. meeting that lasted exactly 11 minutes. Garrett, we want you to know how much Vanguard Risk Solutions values your contributions, Ramona said, sliding a single-page document across her desk. Your mentorship of Declan has been invaluable to his growth and to our organization's success. We're pleased to offer you a loyalty recognition bonus of $15,000 payable over the next 6 months. I read the document twice. $15,000 spread across 6 months, about $2,500 per month before taxes, for 11 years of training the person who had just received a $120,000 raise. This is a one-time recognition payment, I said evenly, not a salary adjustment. That's correct, she replied. We feel this appropriately recognizes your mentorship while preserving the integrity of our compensation structure. I signed the acknowledgement form. Ramona appeared satisfied that I didn't push back. She had no way of knowing that I'd stopped arguing with Vanguard Risk Solutions about 8 months earlier, when I realized that competence and loyalty were treated as liabilities in their promotion calculus, not assets. My name is Garrett Hendress. I'm 39 years old, and I just watched the junior analyst I trained from day one leapfrog me into a director role while I received what amounts to a $1,250 monthly tip for 11 years of work. Before explaining what happened next, it's important to outline what those 11 years actually looked like. I joined Vanguard Risk Solutions in January 2013 as a senior risk analyst, specializing in quantitative financial modeling and derivatives exposure analysis. At the time, the firm was mid-sized, about 180 employees, focused primarily on providing risk analytics to regional banks and credit unions. My job was to build predictive models that helped financial institutions understand exposure across different market scenarios. Declan Forrester joined in August 2013 as a junior analyst, fresh out of a state university with an economics degree and no practical experience in risk modeling. He was 22, motivated, and completely overwhelmed by the technical demands of the role. His first assignment was assisting me on a credit risk assessment model for a $340 million commercial loan portfolio. I spent 6 weeks teaching him the basics, structuring probability of default calculations, calibrating loss given default assumptions, and building Monte Carlo simulations for tail risk scenarios. He struggled at first, mixing up fundamental statistical concepts and making errors that would have led to termination if anyone else had been reviewing his work. I covered for him, corrected mistakes before they reached client deliverables, and walked him through every calculation until he understood not just the process, but the reasoning behind it. I spent evenings after normal work hours explaining quantitative concepts that should have been prerequisites for the position. By month 4, Declan was functional. By month 8, he was competent. By year 2, he was genuinely strong in the technical work. In effect, I had given him a graduate-level education in risk analytics while continuing to meet my own client deliverables and project responsibilities. Over those 11 years, I trained Declan on 73 separate client engagements. I taught him how to build financial models that Vanguard later sold to clients as proprietary methodology. I brought him into strategy sessions with C-suite executives at Fortune 500 companies and coached him beforehand on how to present technical findings to non-technical audiences. I introduced him to industry contacts who became his professional network. When Vanguard won the Meridian Banking Group contract in 2016, a $2.8 million engagement that became our largest client relationship, I had built the original risk framework that secured the deal. Declan assisted, but the core methodology was mine. By 2019, when that contract renewed at $3.4 million annually, Declan was presenting updated models to Meridian's board using frameworks I had taught him to build. I received no credit in those board presentations. My name appeared only in the project documentation, buried in the technical appendix as Senior Risk Analyst Model Development. Declan's name appeared on the slides as Lead Analyst, Strategic Risk Assessment. The pattern was consistent. I developed the intellectual property. Declan delivered it to clients with the confidence and polish I had coached him to acquire. Executives saw Declan in client meetings, saw his presentation skills, and assumed he was the primary driver of the analytics. By 2020, Vanguard had grown to 340 employees. Declan had been promoted to senior analyst, a lateral move into my role despite having 7 years less experience, and his salary had increased to $98,000. Mine had increased to $12,000, a $4,000 gap compared to someone with 7 fewer years of experience across every major client relationship in our division. I raised this imbalance with Ramona during my 2020 performance review. Her reply was polished but unambiguous. Garrett, you're extremely valuable as a technical specialist, but Declan has demonstrated client-facing abilities and strategic thinking that align with our growth direction. We need different types of talent for different roles. Translation: Declan excelled at corporate politics and executive visibility. I excelled at actual risk analytics. Vanguard placed greater value on the former than the latter. After that discussion, I stopped pursuing promotions. Instead, I began documenting everything, every model I built, every methodology I developed, every client relationship I managed, and every hour I spent training Declan and the 8 other junior analysts who rotated through our division, because I understood something Ramona and Vanguard's executive team apparently did not. Institutional knowledge only matters if the institution can retain it. The emergency client call came Friday morning at 6:18 a.m. Meridian Banking Group's Chief Risk Officer, Thomas Brightwell, had identified a major discrepancy in their capital adequacy projections. The models we delivered showed stress test results that conflicted with Meridian's internal calculations by roughly $140 million in required reserve capital. Declan called me at 6:12 a.m., his voice tense. Garrett, I need you on this call. Thomas is asking technical questions about the Monte Carlo calibration methodology, and I can't explain the underlying assumptions. He's threatening to terminate the contract. I was already awake, drinking coffee in my kitchen and reading the Wall Street Journal on my tablet. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering. What exactly is he asking? He's questioning the correlation matrices for the commercial real estate portfolio. He says our default assumptions are too conservative and wants to know why we used rank correlation instead of Pearson correlation for the dependencies. I don't know how to explain it. I knew precisely how to explain it. I had built that methodology in 2017 and spent 3 weeks teaching Declan the statistical rationale for using rank correlation with non-normal distributions. He had apparently forgotten. I'll join the call, I said. Send me the link. At 6:18 a.m., I joined the video conference. 16 people from Meridian's risk management team were present. Declan looked exhausted and strained. Thomas Brightwell looked irritated. Garrett, thank God, Declan said when my video connected. Thomas has some technical questions about the model calibration. Thomas skipped pleasantries. Mr. Hendris, your models indicate we need $140 million more in reserve capital than our internal models suggest. Before we discuss terminating this contract, I need to understand why your correlation assumptions are producing such different outcomes. I opened my laptop, pulled up the model documentation, and walked Thomas through the reasoning behind every calibration choice, every statistical assumption, and every methodological decision. 28 minutes of explaining quantitative concepts to a room of executives and risk managers. Halfway through, I realized something. I was doing exactly what I had done for 11 years, solving problems Declan couldn't solve, maintaining client relationships he couldn't maintain, and providing expertise Vanguard claimed was worth $15,000 while paying Declan $195,000 to take credit for it. At 6:47 a.m., while explaining rank correlation for the 3rd time to a Meridian vice president who still didn't grasp the statistics, I made a decision. I stopped mid-sentence, closed my laptop, and looked directly into the camera. Thomas, I apologize, but I need to step away from this call. Declan can address your remaining questions. The call went silent. Declan's face drained of color. Garrett, wait. I disconnected, shut down my laptop, walked upstairs to the bedroom where my wife, Nicole, was getting ready for work. You're home early, she said, confused. I thought you had that emergency Meridian call. I did. I left. She paused. You left in the middle of the call? In the middle of explaining something, Declan should be able to explain himself if he's worth $195,000 as Director of Strategic Risk Analytics. Nicole sat on the bed, watching me closely. What are you doing, Garrett? Something I should have done 8 months ago, when I realized this company values presentation skills over actual competence. I'm not covering for Declan anymore. If he can't answer Meridian's technical questions, that's Vanguard's problem, not mine. At 7:30 a.m., my phone started ringing. Declan, I declined the call. At 7:05 a.m., a text from Declan, Garrett, please call me back. Thomas is asking questions I can't answer, and he's threatening to pull the contract. I didn't respond. At 7:12 a.m., another call, this time from Ramona Castellanos. I declined again. At 7:14 a.m., a voicemail notification appeared. I didn't listen. By 7:30 a.m., I had received 14 calls and 22 text messages from various people at Vanguard. I switched my phone to airplane mode and went for a run. Let me explain what was happening at Vanguard while I was running. Declan couldn't answer Meridian's technical questions. He tried to deflect, suggesting a follow-up call with detailed written responses, but Thomas Brightwell wasn't accepting delays. He wanted answers immediately, or he would terminate the $3.4 million annual contract. Without me on the call, Declan had no answers. He attempted to explain the correlation methodology and got the statistical reasoning wrong. He defended the calibration assumptions but contradicted the model documentation. By 7:45 a.m., Thomas ended the call and emailed Vanguard's CEO, Preston Whitmore, formally notifying him that Meridian was suspending all ongoing work pending a comprehensive review of Vanguard's analytical capabilities. Suspending work on a $3.44 million contract commands the CEO's attention quickly. By 8:30 a.m., Preston had called an emergency executive meeting. By 9:15 a.m., they decided I was needed on a call with Meridian to salvage the relationship. By 9:22 a.m., Ramona was calling me again. I was home, finishing my run, drinking water in the kitchen, phone still on airplane mode. Nicole watched with a mix of concern and curiosity. You're really doing this? She asked. I really am. They can't have it both ways. Either I'm valuable enough to be compensated appropriately and promoted for my actual contributions, or I'm just a technical specialist they reward with a $15,000 tip while promoting the person I trained to director. They chose the latter. Now they'll see the cost of that choice. At 10 a.m., I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, 12 voicemails. I listened to the most recent voicemail from Preston Whitmore himself. Garrett, this is Preston. I understand you had to step away from the Meridian call this morning. I need you to call me immediately. We have a situation that requires your expertise, and I want to discuss how we can resolve this together. Please call me as soon as you get this message. I deleted the voicemail. Didn't call back. At 10:47 a.m., someone knocked on my front door. I looked through the window. Ramona Castellanos, in business attire, looking stressed. I opened the door, but didn't invite her inside. Ramona, Garrett, we need to talk. Can I come in? I'd prefer to keep this brief. What do you need? She took a frustrated breath. Preston needs you on a call with Thomas Brightwell at 2 p.m. today. Meridian is threatening to terminate the contract unless we provide satisfactory answers to their technical questions. Declan, he wasn't able to address their concerns this morning. That's unfortunate. Declan is the Director of Strategic Risk Analytics. Surely he should be able to answer technical questions about models he's been presenting to Meridian for the past 3 years. Garrett, we both know you built those models. You have the technical expertise they need on this call. Then perhaps Vanguard should have considered that before promoting Declan to director and giving me a $15,000 loyalty bonus. Ramona's expression hardened. This isn't about your compensation. It's about a $3.4 million client relationship that's in jeopardy. No, Ramona. This is exactly about my compensation. Vanguard decided 11 years of building the intellectual property that generates $3.4 million annually is worth $15,000, while the person who learned everything from me gets $195,000 to present my work. You made that decision. Now you live with the consequences. Are you refusing to participate in client calls? That could be considered insubordination. I'm not refusing anything. I'm simply unavailable for the 2 p.m. call. I have personal matters to attend to. What personal matters? That's private. If Vanguard needs technical expertise to maintain the Meridian relationship, I suggest asking your director of strategic risk analytics. That's why you're paying him $195,000, isn't it? I closed the door before she could respond. At 11:30 a.m., Nicole returned from her lunch break. Garrett, I just got a call from Preston Whitmore's assistant. They're asking if they know where you are and if you're all right. What's happening? They're panicking because they're about to lose their largest client and can't solve the problem without me. And they're probably realizing for the first time that paying someone $15,000 while promoting their trainee to $195,000 might have been a strategic mistake. What are you going to do? Wait, they'll either figure out they need to make this right, or they'll lose Meridian. Either way, I'm done being undervalued. The 2 p.m. call with Meridian happened without me. I know because Preston emailed me at 2:47 p.m. describing it as a difficult conversation that would have benefited from my technical input. Translation: it was a disaster. I later learned from a former colleague at Vanguard that Declan had tried answering Thomas's questions again, got the methodology wrong again, and Thomas ended the call after 31 minutes. Meridian formally terminated their contract at 3:15 p.m. that afternoon. $3.4 million in annual revenue gone. By 4 p.m., I received an email from Preston requesting a meeting Monday morning at 8 a.m. to discuss my career trajectory and compensation at Vanguard Risk Solutions. I didn't respond to that email either. Here's what I did instead. Over the weekend, I contacted 7 former colleagues who'd left Vanguard over the past 4 years for competitor firms. I asked each of them the same question. Would their current employer be interested in someone with my background and expertise? 6 of them said yes immediately. The 7th said their firm wasn't currently hiring, but would create a position if I was interested. By Monday morning at 7 a.m., I had 3 formal interview requests. By Monday noon, I had 2 preliminary compensation discussions that both started above $140,000 base salary with significantly better bonus structures than Vanguard had ever offered. I showed up to Preston's 8 a.m. meeting exactly on time. He was waiting in the large conference room with Ramona and Luther Vance, Vanguard's chief operating officer. The presence of the COO told me they understood the seriousness of the situation. Garrett, thank you for coming, Preston began. I want to start by saying we value your contributions to Vanguard, and we recognize there may have been some miscommunication about your role in compensation. I sat down, but said nothing. Let them do the talking. The situation with Meridian was unfortunate, Preston continued. We've lost a significant client relationship, and in retrospect, we should have better supported Declan with technical expertise during that call. We should have made sure you were available to participate. Declan is your director of strategic risk analytics, I said. Why would he need my support? The 3 of them exchanged glances. Luther spoke up. Garrett, we all know that you've been instrumental in developing our risk analytics methodology. Your technical expertise is unique within our organization. Declan has strong client management skills and strategic vision, but he benefits from collaboration with someone of your technical depth. So you're saying Declan can't actually do the job you promoted him into without my assistance? Another exchange of glances. Ramona tried a different approach. We want to discuss a compensation adjustment that better reflects your value to the organization. We're prepared to offer you a salary increase to $135,000 effective immediately, along with an expanded bonus structure tied to division performance. $135,000, a $33,000 raise. Still $60,000 less than Declan's new salary. For someone who actually built the models that Declan presented, that's a generous offer, I said neutrally. What would my title be? You'd remain a senior risk analyst, Preston said, but with enhanced responsibilities and recognition of your technical leadership role. So I'd be making $135,000 as a senior analyst, while Declan makes $195,000 as director, despite the fact that I built the methodologies he can't explain and maintain the client relationships he can't manage without my assistance. Preston shifted uncomfortably. Declan's role encompasses broader strategic responsibilities beyond technical analytics, such as silence, because there were no broader strategic responsibilities. Declan's entire value to Vanguard was built on technical analytics that I taught him. I appreciate the offer, I said, standing up, but I'm going to decline. Garrett, please reconsider, Ramona said quickly. We can discuss this further. The compensation package is negotiable. I'm sure it is, but here's what's not negotiable. My understanding that Vanguard's compensation philosophy values presentation over substance. Declan is excellent at presenting work to clients. I'm excellent at building the work he presents. For 11 years, I accepted that dynamic because I believed competence would eventually be rewarded appropriately. Thursday's announcement proved that belief was incorrect. We're trying to correct that now, Luther said. You're trying to correct it after losing a $3.4 to $4 million client because you promoted someone who couldn't defend his own work without my assistance. That's not compensation philosophy. That's crisis management. I walked to the door, then turned back. One more thing. I trained Declan everything he knows about risk analytics. I built the models. I developed the methodologies. I maintained the client relationships. And you paid me $15,000 to mentor him into a position paying $60,000 more than mine. If you want to understand why you lost Meridian, that's your answer. You systematically undervalued the person who generated your intellectual property while promoting the person who commodified it. That's not a sustainable business model. I left the conference room at 8:34 a.m. By 8:40 a.m., I'd cleaned out my desk. By 8:47 a.m., I'd surrendered my building access badge to reception. By 9 a.m., I was driving home. Nicole was working from home that morning. She looked up from her laptop when I walked in at 9:15. You quit? I quit. Just like that. Just like that. They offered me $135,000 to stay and fix their Meridian problem, while Declan kept his $195,000 director title for work he couldn't actually do. I declined. Do you have another job lined up? I have 3 interviews scheduled this week, 2 preliminary compensation discussions starting above $140,000, and a strong negotiating position because every conversation starts with, "We heard what happened with Vanguard and Meridian." Word spreads fast in the risk analytics industry. By Monday afternoon, I had received 4 additional recruiting calls. By Tuesday, I had 2 formal job offers. By Wednesday, I had a third offer, $165,000 base salary, performance bonus capped at 40% of base, full benefits, and a $25,000 signing bonus. The offer came from Hexagon Risk Partners, a competitor that had been trying to enter the regional banking market for 2 years. They needed someone who could build risk analytics frameworks for financial institutions, someone with market knowledge, technical expertise, and client relationships, someone exactly like me. I accepted their offer on Thursday morning and started the following Monday. Here's what happened at Vanguard after I left. Without my technical expertise, Declan couldn't rebuild the Meridian relationship. He tried to schedule calls with Thomas Brightwell, but Thomas refused to engage. Approximately 4 weeks after I joined Hexagon, Meridian moved their risk analytics contract to my new firm. I didn't pitch Meridian. I didn't need to. Thomas called me directly and asked if Hexagon could provide the same technical sophistication I had delivered at Vanguard. I said yes and was asked to build a proposal. 3 weeks later, Hexagon secured a $3.8 million contract with Meridian, $400,000 more than Vanguard had been charging. Meridian wasn't the only client that fell apart. Over the next 6 months, 4 other major clients reduced or terminated contracts with Vanguard. Each case followed the same pattern: technical questions Declan couldn't answer, model performance issues he couldn't diagnose, methodology concerns he couldn't address. Vanguard's revenue dropped by approximately $7.2 million in the first year after I left. They hired 3 new senior analysts to rebuild technical capabilities, but institutional knowledge doesn't transfer instantly. The frameworks I had built over 11 years took years to replicate. 7 months after I left, Preston Whitmore reached out, offering me a return as Vice President of Risk Analytics with a compensation package of $185,000 plus equity. I politely declined. At Hexagon, I was making $165,000, expected to hit performance bonuses, adding $66,000, had better work-life balance, and, most importantly, I was valued. Hexagon CEO Diana Sharp told me in my interview, "We're hiring you because we need someone who can build intellectual property, not just present it. If you can do what you did at Vanguard, you'll be running this division within 3 years." 18 months after joining Hexagon, I was promoted to Senior Director of Risk Analytics with a $210,000 salary. 2 years later, I became Vice President of Quantitative Solutions at $245,000 plus equity. Declan lasted 13 months at Vanguard after I left. Without my support, his limitations became clear. He was demoted back to Senior Analyst at $115,000, an $80,000 pay cut, and resigned 4 months later. Last I heard, he was working for a regional consulting firm doing basic financial modeling, making approximately $95,000. I don't take pleasure in Declan's career difficulties. He was competent with proper guidance. His mistake wasn't accepting the promotion. It was allowing Vanguard to place him in a role requiring technical expertise he didn't independently have while undervaluing the person who provided that expertise. Vanguard's mistake was more fundamental. They confused client presentation skills with actual technical capability. They promoted charisma over competence, valuing the person who could sell the work more than the person who could build it. That mistake cost them $7.2 million in revenue, their largest client, significant market reputation, and the institutional knowledge developed over 11 years, all to save money on my compensation while rewarding someone who couldn't function without me. In late 2023, I was invited to speak at a risk management conference about building sustainable analytics teams. I used Vanguard as an anonymous case study on what happens when organizations fail to properly value technical expertise. The presentation emphasized 3 key lessons. First, compensation should reflect actual value creation, not just client visibility. The person building the intellectual property generates far more long-term value than the person presenting it, even if the latter is more visible to clients and executives. Second, promotion decisions should be based on independent capability, not supported performance. If someone cannot function effectively without constant expert assistance, they are not ready for the promoted role, regardless of their other skills. Third, institutional knowledge is fragile and hard to replace. Organizations that undervalue the people who create their core competencies will eventually lose those competencies, often at the worst possible moment. After the presentation, 7 executives approached me about consulting engagements to review talent management and compensation practices. That led to a side business helping firms restructure how they identify and retain technical expertise. The irony is not lost on me. Vanguard paid me $15,000 for 11 years of mentorship that enabled a $120,000 promotion for someone else. Now, companies pay me $45,000 to $70,000 per engagement to explain why that approach destroys organizational value. Here's what I learned from the experience. The most dangerous employee to undervalue isn't the one who complains loudly about pay or threatens to quit. It's the one who quietly builds all your institutional knowledge, maintains critical client relationships, and generates competitive advantages until the day they decide they're done subsidizing poor judgment. When that person leaves, they don't just take their individual contributions, they take the foundational expertise that everyone else's performance depends on. And you don't realize how much you needed them until you're watching $3.4 million walk out the door during a 6:47 a.m. phone call. Vanguard wanted to pay me like a supporting actor while giving Declan the director's salary. They learned expensively that I wasn't supporting anyone's performance. I was the performance. Declan was just reading the script I had written over 11 years. When you finally understand that distinction, it's usually too late to fix it. The audience has already left, and the person who wrote the script is working somewhere else, building something better and getting paid what they're actually worth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making people regret what they did to you, it's making them regret what they lost when you stopped letting them do it.